So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and this is a map we have seen before in all fairness, but much like the desert one last time out, it is not one that we have seen in quite some time. This is the MORIQUENDI Tower. We have another eclectic mix of factions as well on display today. This one was sent to me shortly before the turn of the new year, so this one is not fresh off the presses in the same way that Tommy's was when I got back from the Christmas break, but I am trying to clear through all of the replays that I got sent through before Christmas, and this is one of them. And yeah, this is a pretty interesting map as well, because in many ways the final stand location is more exposed than some of the outer fortifications, so if you are forced back early, you can end up on this hilltop, which still gives you a terrain advantage, but you're very exposed up on this hilltop, so you do need to make the most of your outer fortifications before ultimately pulling back. And from an attacking perspective, if you can maintain some of your ranged prowess, then you should be in a pretty good place. And speaking of which, technically speaking, the home faction would be these guys, Zelhain playing as Dorwinion, but I guess they're trying to reconquer the MORIQUENDI Tower with their namesake elves marching as part of their retinue here, as we can see. We've got the Elvelyn infantry, and when you're on the attack as Dorwinion, the Elvelyn infantry and Vinegard are going to be the staples by which you build your attack, because they're reasonably numerous, not in comparison maybe to some of the other Western kingdoms, but numerous enough, and what really sets them apart is the fact that they've got good armour, good stamina as well, so they'll be able to stay in the fight for a decently long period of time, and they are pretty resilient as well. The MORIQUENDI, by comparison, are much more similar to the Sylvan elves that we see from Mirkwood and from Rhovanion, a little bit less armoured, maybe a little bit more similar to Mirkwood out of those two, but still very damaging. The MORIQUENDI bows here do have those poison projectiles, which can be so useful in this sort of situation. And we've also got a couple of units of MORIQUENDI pikes over here as well. Elven pikes across the board, whether they're Linden, Lothlorien, Imladris, or here in Dorwinion, are going to be pretty damaging, considering that pikes usually get their damage dealt a little bit more slowly. Obviously, again though, the lighter armour is a problem if they get isolated by enemy skirmishers. The Hammer Guard going to be useful at dealing with any sort of armoured units on the defence, as well as being, again, like all of the Elvelyn units, defensively adept themselves. And then you've got the Elven equivalent, again, far more offence focused in terms of, well, I mean, they don't have the armour piercing, but in every other aspect they are more offence focused. A dual wielding, very high melee defense, very high base damage kind of unit. Again, the MORIQUENDI Glademaster's main issue is going to be the fact that while they do have 2 HP, they're still not going to have the same sort of armour as many other high tier bodyguard units do have, and the lack of a shield means over time arrows can be a problem. And the Elvelyn marksmen are here as well. The heavier archer, they're going to be committed forward a little earlier, you would suspect, with the armour that they have to try and mitigate all of that damage. We have the Warlord here playing as Isengard. Uruk-hai crossbows, I mean, one thing that Isengard obviously brings to the table is their crossbows, and a map like this, initially the crossbows probably won't be very good in the outer fortifications like I mentioned, but they could be really handy at trying to deal with the centre of the settlement and the tower itself. So yeah, we'll see. Decent armour on them as well to try and mitigate any arrow fire they take in the meantime. The Uruk-hai infantry very similar, really well-rounded line infantry unit this, reasonably expensive for what they are, but good melee stats, good damage, and of course good survivability as any good line infantry unit needs. We've also got the Uruk-hai Raiders, the lower tier version of them, but more numerous. Again, when you're on the attack and you're really trying to twist the knife, especially in a 5v3, they can be very, very handy. And we've also got the Champions of the White Hand. I don't know how likely a sally out on a map like this is. I mean, it's very sheer walls around the outside. I imagine they're going to stay within, especially in a 5v3, but you can never be too careful. Nazkai, very, very potent armor-piercing shock troops, some of the best that the game has to offer. Guards of Orthanc, very heavily armoured spears, so they'll make for a good centre to an attacking force. Uruk-hai infantry and the Trolls of the White Hand, monstrous infantry, very damaging. No pikes that we can see though, which is an interesting omission that we don't often see from Isengard. Another armour-focused faction, King Lazy here is going to be playing as Gondor. Pelagia Marines here. We've also got the Gondor Archers, a full lineup of them. With the veterans of Osgiliath of late, we've seen them be pretty effective, fully upgraded. Actually, no, not fully upgraded, only to the 2nd level. But still a good skirmishing force here along the front, backed up by javelins. So yeah, that's a pretty well-rounded ranged force, and they'll be having the most direct route, potentially, to the towers. We'll see how Gondor get on there. Citadel Guard with their javelins as well and armor-piercing spears. Same sort of story with the Fountain Guard, just far more melee focused, entirely melee focused of course. And we've also got the unupgraded Gondor Spearmen. Similar sort of story here for the Gondorian rank and file as it is for Dorwinion, albeit Dorwinion place a little bit more emphasis on survivability of individual units and long lasting, whereas Gondor, they rely a little bit more on their armor score for that when it comes to upgrading the Gondor infantry here, but they are also more numerous. A couple of units of them there, and then we've got the upgraded Axemen of Lasarnak as well to give Gondor some more armor-piercing bite in more of an aggressive manner than the Fountain Guard perhaps manage it. But I mean, the Fountain Guard probably still do damage more quickly, but the Axemen are of course far cheaper and far more specialised for only dealing damage to armoured infantry. And then the Nimlothian Honour Guard, another armor-piercing spear unit. It's a real staple of the Gondorian roster. You know, the spears are typically more defensive, but they try to get around that by having that armor-piercing sting to them. And they're also very defensively minded, of course, as well. Moving on, it's been quite a while actually since we've seen the Rhovanion under the Womb Raiders command here. We've got the Rovikin Hoplons, similar to the Dorwinion in the sense that they're a very clearly defined hybrid faction, the Rovikin units being the more heavily armoured upper echelon of their society, which is how they differ from Dorwinion. You know, the more specialty units for Dorwinion are the Moriquendi, whereas sort of the more upper end units for the Rhovanion are the heavily armoured units that the Elvelyn are for Dorwinion. So that's a little bit of a difference there, but several units of the heavily armoured spears. In many ways, the tribal units, though, as much as they do represent, in many ways, cheaper units and more numerous units, they do tend to determine how well the Rhovanion do, because they have the numbers to pack around the more heavily armoured core. And also back here, I mean, certainly from a melee perspective, the Berserkers are one of the only out-and-out damage dealers that the Rhovanion have. Several units of them, multiple HP, armor-piercing, very dangerous with those Falxes. We've got the Rovikin Archers, again another heavy archer, but then you have stuff like the Slingers and the Skirmishers, so slings and javelins, again, more armor-piercing damage in high numbers as well. It can be a pretty intimidating thing to deal with. And the Saber-Tooth Riders, monstrous cavalry like this, I mean, it's probably most similarly compared to what the Dwarves can do, albeit in a more flimsy manner. And then finally, the last attacking army, we have Arthedain, played by Sokka and Joya. So we've got, again, fully upgraded Arthedain Spearmen. They're going to have quite a lot in common with Gondor, you would suggest. Several units of the Arthedainian Spearmen and Arthedain Men-at-Arms as well. Fully upgraded, interestingly, over here, whereas the Gondorians were not, even though the Gondorians do have cheaper upgrades, albeit more of them. Again, Arthedain Marksmen, just the one level of armour upgrade on one, none on the other, but good enough at skirmishing. The Wardens of the North with that armour piercing of theirs. And then we've also got the Defenders of Fornost here in force, and then we've also got the Trebuchet here at the back. So it's the first example of an artillery piece we've seen so far. Again, if you can get that into the centre of the settlement, it could be devastating. You might struggle to use it outside here because of the sheer size of the outer fortifications. Also, there's going to be some hidden Dunedain over there, because that's very clearly not the entirety of the Arthedainian roster. Moving on, we have their brethren over here, Cardolan. They're going to be facing off against directly Ding Da King. So again, Cardolan archers. I think Cardolan in this sort of situation in the outer fortifications, especially with their crossbows, could be really, really nasty. The gatekeepers, very damaging, and of course later on they can also be very handy in melee as well with those halberds, responding in kind with their own trebuchet draped in their green coloration. So again, far more likely that early doors, at the very least, the defenders should be able to get more out of their artillery, depending on how they choose to use it. Huge clump of units here. The upgraded Dunedain Captains, a very strong unit of melee cavalry, but how they can be utilised in this situation, I don't know. There's not too much that would stop them, I suppose. Saber-Tooth Riders, Champions of the White Hand, try and hunt them down, but they'll give as good as they get in that engagement, so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Far more of a pike presence here from Cardolan, as you would expect as well, to try and clog up those main pathways through the settlement. They can be very good at that with their defensive infantry as well. Warns of Tir Gorthad, Greenway Footmen are going to be in and amongst here as well. We've got the Tharbad Tollkeepers, Thieves of Tharbad hidden among there as well. The upgraded Tharbad Warhammers, big armour piercing damage, which is going to be pretty handy mostly across the board, maybe less so against the Rhovanion. Certainly from their tribal units anyway. We've got the Hearthguard of Amon Sul. At least they stand out with their purple colorations and sort of horsehair helms. More Cardolan sharpshooters as well. And there we have it. So we'll see a little bit more of their army as the battle goes along. Meanwhile, defending the middle, Medexa is playing as the Shire Guard over here. Interesting that they're defending the tower, because in many ways going through the main entrance may be the attacker's best bet early doors, especially if it's the Shire, maybe with a little bit more of a lightweight defence. But when you've got stuff like the Merc crossbows up here as well, you are still going to be able to do a good amount of damage to an overly aggressive foe. And then you've also got the matter of the Proudfoot Protectors, more crossbow bolts. That's going to be a real feature of the defenders, at least in this part of the settlement, you would say. Battling Brandybucks with those scythes. Of course, we also have the Bjornings, or, well, the Skin Changers, and the Shire Guard over here as well, so monstrous infantry for the defenders too, which could be really, really nasty against the right kind of foes. Got another unit of the Merc crossbows here at the back, more Proudfoot Protectors, more Shire Guards, so investing a lot into the basic halberds and also the heavy hitting units that the Shire have access to, and a second unit of the Skin Changers as well. Of course, the Shire have got so many units that can hide anywhere that we're going to see a lot more of their army a little bit later on, you would say. And last but not least, the player who sent me this battle replay is Hidden. He's going to be playing as Mirkwood, so they too will be very damaging from afar, but not with their crossbows. This will be with mostly their archers, and we can see here Mirkwood Rangers, devastating Elven Rangers, even bigger damage than their human counterparts. Elder Council for some javelin action as well. We do have Elder Pathfinders and the Mirkwood Border Guard, so that'll be interesting. See how well a sally out with them goes, because Mirkwood's cavalry can be easily, well, fairly easily zoned out by archers. Usually stuff like crossbows will be your main consideration there, but Mirkwood are lightly armed enough to the point where even archers are going to be enough, so we'll see how well they can be used. The Hiriak and the Hirilang going to be real staples of this defence as well. Mirkwood don't have the biggest armies at the best of times, but in a 5v3 with their budget, they should be able to bring quite a lot of their heavier units and pack on those armour upgrades and try and really leverage that quality that they do have. Elven Kingsguard with their axes in melee. Woodland Realm Axemen, another monstrous infantry unit as well, the Entwives, so there's going to be a lot of heavy hitters from the defenders here. When they choose to bring them to the party will be pretty big for the outcome of this one, you would suggest. Yeah, Elder Royal Councillor in there. I did see the weapons of the Palace Guard as well, but they're all in and amongst things too. Plenty of Mirkwood Rangers and more Woodland Realm Axemen as well. So yeah, I'll make a little bit of a cut. I don't think we'll have to wait too long though. The attackers are mostly already here. They might wait for Dorwinion and Arthedain to start pushing in from the sides or go around to the back end of the settlement, but I don't know. We'll wait and see, and we'll rejoin when the battle is about to begin. So I'm going to rejoin here because I've missed the opening salvo in the last couple of battle replays, and it's going to be kind of difficult to maintain a view of everything that's going on when I'm trying to skip through at times 6 speed, especially when in particular you've got Mirkwood over here who have set up an enormous firing line which Isengard are going to have to pass through immediately, and interestingly enough they are, it looks like, the defenders going to at least forego some of the outer territories, but it is with a purpose, I suppose, because when it comes to some of these choke points over here, you're better off getting those side-swiping hits with those very damaging Mirkwood archers, whereas on the other side of the settlement I do think we are going to see a little bit more of a ground defence laid on by Cardolan, given their strengths and given the fact that over here you don't want to cede too much territory. Given the fact there's a little bit more room for the attackers to work with initially, there's not quite as much in the way of really narrow and constricting pathways. Hearthguard of Amon Sul moving forward as the frontline skirmisher, which is rather intriguing. I suppose the closest thing we have to a theme here is that all of the factions on defence typically wear green, but that's not much of a morally based factor to things. Mirkwood Rangers, this is going to be a really nasty trudge for the attackers to try and get through. I mean, Zelhain, Moriquendi and their Elvelyn allies going to be the ones to try and reclaim their home territory here. Some strange bedfellows though. Vanderbrass archers saw them just in time before they then pinged out of existence once more. Gondorians potentially going to move through here, but it doesn't look like there's going to be too much of an appetite for the attackers to move in directly. Damage being done now by mercenary crossbows, so we do see the first bits of damage done. And again, being up on horseback, it does allow you actually more of a vantage point to try and get over the fact you can't shoot directly downwards. surely the Nimlothian Honour Guard will be the ones to go after, if anything, over here from Medexa's point of view. In either way, they're going to get some pretty decent damage done here to Gondor, as they were going to move to the relative safety of Under the Walls, but now that is not going to be the case. Fountain Guard getting hit by the Tookish Hunters as well. Wasting no time either with opening up with many skirmishers, and Gondor the ones to take the full brunt of that for now. The Rhovanion going to move forward maybe to put some pressure on. I mean, they're the first ones inside the settlement with these tribal levy spears, but on their own this will not be enough to make any progress or elicit any sort of response from the defenders. Meanwhile, we've got Arthedain, who have arrived in the backfield as well, ready to tussle with their Arnorian cousins. So I would assume that Dorwinion are going to try and go in through Mirkwood's pathway there, but I would argue that maybe taking the really long route around and again going directly for the part of the settlement with the tower in and amongst it would probably be the way to go. Merc crossbows, I mean, the Gondorians investigating the possibility of doing that themselves now that they've moved their army away from getting shot up by the various skirmishers at the front of the settlement, but the Hobbitry in arms being hidden, of course, there was always going to be an element of ambush warfare at play when you're talking about dealing with the Shire and Mirkwood, which is going to give the attackers a bit of a strange view of proceedings, really, because they're going to see most of the Cardolan army, of course, but that isn't going to be the case with Mirkwood and the Shire, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to see where the full bulk of the defenders actually are until they move. Flaming arrows being used by the Cardolan archers to try and burn down the artillery. And again, they would like to get rid of this before the final attack on the tower itself, but it's easier said than done. I mean, it used to be next to impossible to set artillery ablaze. It is now very doable. But a regular unit of archers like that will still take a while of sustained fire to do that, but you know, they're gaining a little bit here. No direct damage done though. They are going to be able to get that trebuchet back behind cover, albeit very close to the Cardolan line, so not without its own potential pitfalls. Hobbitry in arms ready and waiting for the Gondorian advance, so far manoeuvring around, but the height of the walls here and the positioning means that the defenders have been able to get some pretty nice damage done. Gondor strewn across the field over there. Isengard not too eager to move in with anything too important just yet. Uruk-hai raiders only. Elven battle cries going up, but from what? Elder Royal Council. They do have an angle on the trolls. That is fair enough. I mean, you're not seeing the trolls get sent flying in the same way as regular infantry, but equally, the amount of damage you're going to be able to do to the trolls with archers, even if they are some of the very best archers in the game, is going to be limited because of how tanky they are. And also, Trolls of the White Hand, this is one of the instances where their huge shields will also be coming into play. Some of the Uruk-hai raiders in their manoeuvring have actually gone in the way of those arrows as well. I don't think you would even be able to cover for the trolls, to be honest with you. What on earth was that? Some sort of artillery. Spearguard moving forward, but not enough for the regular archers to yet get involved from an elven perspective. Back end of the settlement, got some more dead crossbows. That will be from the MORIQUENDI stalkers doing their thing. Dorwinion still very much in the transitory phase of this battle. Fortification here for the hobbits to be able to use against any sort of Dorwinion pressure from over here, but yeah, the mercenary crossbows are not going to do very well when confronted with MORIQUENDI stalkers like that. Meanwhile, trying to force their way through here, the tribal levy spears. I mean, that's bold. It's not going to work. They themselves going up against the Tharbad Tollkeepers, who offensively, as we've mentioned many times, are not a particularly gifted unit, but here the positioning of these spears is not going to be to their benefit, and undoubtedly they will end up routing as a result of this. But it does mean that the spears are sort of curling around the unit they're engaged with now, and that is allowing a slightly better angle for the slingers in behind. And this is a 5v3, so sacrificing the occasional low tier unit to move the battle forwards a little bit, or even just kill off some units to make your numbers advantage more pronounced is worthwhile. Obviously last time out we did see the potential pitfalls of being an attacker in this situation. Even if you play without too many errors, the defenders do still have some options to make life very uncomfortable for you. Surely this huge elven firing line is one of the main reasons to be uncomfortable. They will see the Hiriak, but they won't see the Axemen and the Entwives ready and waiting for them. So this will be the moment of truth for Dorwinion. What route are they going to take? Isengard would probably prefer they go down this way, otherwise they're going to be receiving the brunt of that elven damage alone. Dorwinion themselves may see the value in taking a more direct approach. Arthedain still pretty widespread in the open areas of the battlefield. We do have a melee engagement between Cardolan and Arthedain, between some pretty serious units as well. Tharbad Warhammers and Dunedain Trollslayers are involved in this fight, as well as some of the rank and file from both factions as well. Victory seems certain. So yeah, it is the Trebuchet trying to get some shots, and they are going to be able to arc the artillery over, but not necessarily the easiest shot to hit anything, really. Cardolan sharpshooters, 2 units of them overwatching the parts of the battlefield where the Rhovanion are going to be trying to get through, in addition to the mounted variants as well. Hearthguard of Amon Sul, and the Hoplons. Units like this will be very nice against the standard Cardolan archers, but not so great at dealing with those crossbow bolts, unfortunately for them. The Hoplons at the very least will be made of sterner stuff in comparison to the tribal levy spears when it comes to dealing with the initial Cardolan front lines. Slightly worrying from a Cardolan perspective is the fact they're going to be having to deal with potentially 2 full armies worth of units here. Still eager to send reinforcements forward, but they are going to need some help from their allies at some point, you would imagine. Especially given the eagerness of these forces to commit some heavy duty stuff forward fairly early on. I don't know if the Trollslayers use their ammunition, but maybe they don't need to. Their utility as a melee unit could be just as important in this situation, given how brutally effective the Tharbad Warhammers can be against most of what Arthedain have otherwise, apart from their Dunedain units. Crossbows, don't know if they're out of ammunition yet, but charging in, cycle charging the Pelagia Marines. It'll take a couple more before they do rout this unit off, but unsupported, these Pelagia Marines will fall away as a result of that, but right on cue, a unit of Gondor Spearmen do move forwards. Still got those Shire archers up there as well. Guards of Orthanc and Half-Orc Spearguard directly in front of all of the Mirkwood archers, which they know are up there, but not yet ready to commit themselves forward just yet. Got the Realm Axemen fighting in the gap. The Entwives were committed in as well. There is this unit of Hiriak, but no need to commit units that you don't need to, given it was only a single unit of Uruk-hai Raiders, which are going to be no match for a unit like the Entwives. Easy kills, which again the defenders will be hoping for quite a bit more of. Some expedition cavalry sent in by Dorwinion, but they are going to send in some units over here. Maybe going to divide their attention. Not the easiest shots when you get into these streets, in all fairness, but in order to make the most of the angle they have, they do need to hold from both angles rather than immediately retreating to this choke point over here, which is not such fertile ground for the Mirkwood archers to do the business. We do do still have the occasional unit. It does look as though they are going to prioritise going down Mirkwood Alley. Thieves of Tharbad are up here as well. Still not any real territorial gains here, involved in just a straight up ground war with the Cardolan units that were already in here. Arthedain man-at-arms are in there, Troll Slayers, taking a few losses, but nothing too significant. Same story really with the Tharbad Warhammers, but I think Arthedain will be pleased that Cardolan have sent forward so much in such a short space of time, because if that wasn't enough, they're also having to deal with the ever-increasing tribal threat from the Rhovanion, and again the Slingers are the main danger here. Cardolan men-at-arms caught a little bit out of position, you would have to say. Then you can see from on high projectiles spewing forth from the crossbows and bows the Cardolan have up on the walls. We've also got Thieves of Tharbad flinging their projectiles in. I mean, they'll do plenty of damage to the tribal units, but maybe their true calling lies as a melee unit, so just dumping their ammo on anything is the call that is being made. The Shire's still over here, and Gondor's still not too keen to move in directly. Given the fact that Cardolan and Mirkwood can't really shuffle back from their positions, given the fact they're taking on two armies, it might not be the worst thing for Gondor to put some real pressure on the Shire, because if anything, the Shire's utility as reinforcements to their two allies might be a key factor here. Dorwinion's forward progress has now been stopped. Another unit of Woodland Realm Axemen comes out of hiding, and of course that other unit of Hiriak coming in from the side. No armour piercing to speak of against that Elvelyn plate, but just in terms of sheer quality, the Elves will still be absolutely fine against the regular troops from Dorwinion. Mirkwood Border Guard as well. Not necessarily going to be able to use their mobility here, but their close range support from their bows. Already seen the MORIQUENDI Stalkers get some damage done to units when they were in a disadvantageous position, so could still be handy. Meanwhile, Half-Orc Spearguard being attacked by the Entwives. Still all of them left alive, and still kills being funneled into the Ents, but I mean, friendly fire if anything might be an issue there. Still going after the Trolls, which is an interesting choice, because I mean, part of the problem we've had when seeing people try and deal with the Trolls and fail before is the fact they've often entered combat with full health. That will not be the case now, but it's also very hard to gauge how much health a unit like this still has. You can tell if they're bloodied or not, but the threshold for a unit being bloodied is actually fairly low, so for a unit with several HP like that, it's not really a telltale sign that they're injured. Hence the Entwives here. Still getting a good amount of damage done as Isengard continue to try and push forwards now. More of the trees come back within this structure. Hiriak backs to the walls, but the Woodland Realm Axemen will now join the fray. Pretty well engineered engagement this. But now the Trolls are coming in as well, so again we're going to see... It's always weird to see these monstrous infantry units fighting one another, because it's always pretty difficult to see which one of them is actually gaining the upper hand in this fight, because it's not as if they have any animations that make it clear that they're actually fighting one another. But we will see how this goes. It's more important that Mirkwood get value for money out of their monstrous infantry than Isengard do. So maybe that groundwork done by the initial damage is the call to make. Hobbitry and arms now revealed by the Gondor infantry, who are now threatening to move forward in a more aggressive manner. Some routing Tharbad Tollkeepers there. Skin Change is of course another monstrous infantry unit, and once again we're seeing the tall walls on the outer edge of the settlement be used to good effect by the defenders as soon as the attackers move in. Getting hit in the back is the order of the day, negating all of the Gondorian spears. So they have now made it around the corner of the Rhovanion, again utilising their slings to try and soften up the front line. Flaming arrows and then artillery to artillery, the trebuchet, and bouncing projectiles are a bit of a danger in this sort of environment, because you could end up doing damage to your own man. But again, I still maintain that of all the defenders, Cardolan are the ones that maybe worry me the most, because they're in a position where, unlike Mirkwood, who can do tons of damage with their archers, Cardolan still can, but it's mostly to the Rhovanion only. Whereas Arthedain can move forward and put pressure on the infantry numbers, which you don't have enough of to be able to just sort of stand here indefinitely. Trebuchet for the defenders could also be super handy later on, especially seeing as the attacking Treb is going to be using up quite a lot of its ammunition. There's a Shire presence over here, but Dorwinion and Arthedain at any moment could move forward and make a mess of this defensive position, with the Realm Axemen doing their best on the front line to maintain things. Got some Elven King's Guard as well, so some out of ammo archers, but that is an armor piercing unit, so these Elvelin are not going to have a better time of it really. Hiri Lung now moving forwards as well, so trying to take advantage again, much like Cardolan are on the other side against Arthedain. Mirkwood going to try and take advantage of the very narrow fighting position that these buildings offer them. Victory, a distinct possibility for Isengard at the moment. Can't help but notice that Trolls of the White Hand, 4 of them are left. Entwives, 7 of them are left, so both sides came out of that looking a little bit worse for wear. Meanwhile, right at the back now, Elven King's Palace Guard as well, Elder Palace Guard. That's going to be a bit of a game changer, so I mean Isengard are bogged down here. But that should, in theory, give a little bit more credence to Dorwinion's attack over here, or at the very least open up the possibility of them moving forwards over here. Considering Gondor's attack on the other side has already begun, again, especially in a 3v5, it always pays for the attackers to try and hit as many angles as they possibly can. Try and make the battlefield as big as possible. There's only so many resources the defenders have. Vanderbrass archers firing into the Gondorians here, whose progress has been stymied. Some battling Brandybuck sent forward the Shire Guard. The best line-holding unit that the Shire has, albeit it's in an area of combat that they're not exactly the most well-equipped to deal with, shall we say. Crisscross of arrows as well. Vanderbrass archers, I mean, yeah, Gondor taking damage here. Brute force is surely the way to go. Doubling down on committing units is how they make progress. More slinger bullets, gatekeepers up on high, but it's the Cardolan archers picking up the slack for now, which again I think is wise. Slinger ammo. This is the sort of thing which is really hard to gauge how effective this is until all is said and done, and then you can make your conclusions based on that. Over here, meanwhile, defenders of Fornost. Victory is a distinct possibility. Again, continuous, decent quality units being sent in by Arthedain. Cardolan can't afford to send in their entire force, but still 26 Starvide Warhammers, and their superior stats in comparison to the Troll Slayers has yielded results, but they're buying time really, not victory. It's important that they... Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying, like the Trebuchet was close by, but they do need to make sure that this thing gets to safety. What's the point as well? There's a lot of these walls, but if all of a sudden the attackers were to make big gains in terms of shutting those off by getting some units in and around the tower, it could make things pretty messy for the defenders, so it is a case of if one defensive position falls, the defenders need to be ready to move back and get into defensive shape very, very fast if this is going to yield good results for them. Elder Council doing their thing, Javelins on the way forward, MORIQUENDI Glade Masters are in there, so with the Mirkwood sort of bodyguard units and high tier units fighting against Isengard, that should give them a leg up in terms of quality, but they are being hit by Javelins and Archers immediately upon arrival. I can understand why the Hammer Guard were not committed forwards perhaps, because they're not going to do so well against Mirkwood, but the shields would certainly be helpful in that sort of situation. Elder Council Again, the Entwives still just about alive. Finishing off yet more half-orcs. Snaga. Units moving forward. I mean, Guards of Orthanc will be tougher to get rid of, especially now that some of the main damage dealers are gone. The Palace Guard will have to do quite a lot of heavy lifting. Yeah, it's been a tough battle for the Warlord, but not much he could have done about that, really. I think advancing in was non-negotiable. Had to be done. Royal Council. Still a matter of the Rangers as well. What are they going to fire at? Shaken already, the Snaga skirmishers. Not too surprising, given the situation they face, I guess. Banderbrass archers taking hits from the supporting Gondor archers, so resorting to using such units now rather than holding on to them and utilising them on units in and around the tower, but needs must. There's not a huge amount of melee presence on the front line now, but still the skin changes, damage spike and the remaining Shire Guard are enough to hold the line against the Gondorians for now, but fresh Gondor infantry does arrive, surrounding the Phalanx units as well. And there's not a huge amount of truly damaging units here. The Javelins maybe are their hope against the skin changes, but skin changes will do quite nicely against the Gondor infantry. Cardolan archers shuffling themselves across. Hearthguard of Amon Sul have since come down from the walls after firing at the Rhovanion all this time and are now involved in the melee scrap. Victory seems certain for Cardolan, with again just the tribal units being sent forward, but this is a sign that they are marshalling their strength here, the Rhovanion. The Berserkers, only now are we starting to see some of them move in. Monstrous Cav as well. But yeah, with Berserkers, obviously goes without saying, considering their armor-piercing focus, they will be pretty darn good against the Cardolan forces, utilising it against that Númenorian-inspired plate. Decent amount of pressure, and they're trying to force their way through, and I don't know if Cardolan really have anything they can commit forwards to melee now. I mean, they could try with some sharpshooters, but that's not going to be enough to turn the battle around. Maybe try and charge in with Cav to buy yourself some more time, because I think this part of the settlement is on the verge of falling, really. Arthedain are going to be able to force their way through the very few remaining Tharbad Warhammers and the Thieves of Tharbad that remain, so yeah, setting up another front line I think is the way to go. You've still got your firing squads set up to be able to do some damage as well. Still the other unit of skin changes over here, and still this force is not yet ready to move in. I suppose they're all basic units they've got back here. But still, time will tell whether that caution is warranted. I mean, it does mean they're going to have a whole other army to march on the settlement with later on. Harry Land defeat is a distinct possibility, which, considering it's mostly Alvalin, is surprising, but let's not forget there are some very strong Morikwendi units at the heart of this force, and more Alvalin are arriving now, so from a numbers perspective, this is looking pretty decent for Dorwinion. Like I said, one crack in the defence that allows them to flood into the middle of this settlement is probably the cue for the attackers to just go all in. Still one Entwife left. Elder Council pulling back now. They've done a lot of damage to Isengard over here, but Isengard still have a bit more left to give. Nazkai taking the occasional hit from the Royal Council as well. Still those skin changes in the distance. Gondor and Isengard have definitely been the attackers to suffer quite a bit at the moment, I would say. Rhovanion, Arthedain, and Dorwinion haven't had it quite so bad at the moment, and I think that this is pretty key, because I think Cardolan are going to need a little bit of help if they are going to stop a full-blooded attack from Arthedain and the Rhovanion all at once in a fairly wide choke point. Again, damage on the approach from the Thieves of Tharbad. Warns of Tir and Gorthad not quite in the position to meet the attack right from the off, and I don't know if one unit of Cardolan sharpshooters in melee is going to be enough to stop this offensive for any length of time, really. Tribal Berserkers moving in, they have taken a few losses already. Marksman going to set up as well, be interesting to see what sort of ammunition the Trebuchet still has left. Probably still a little bit. Troll Slayers, bloodied from their earlier encounters. And the Gatekeepers as well. I mean, all of these units up on the walls could be cut off if progress is made, but Horns of Tir and Gorthad will stymie that momentum a little bit for the time being. And still, the Rhovanion trying to make good use of those slingers. Death by 1,000 cuts indeed. And that crossbow damage, though, is another thing which is kind of hard to gauge. Still a bit of Rhovanion reinforcements, even way outside the walls as well. As for the Gondorians, I mean, they've been forced fully back outside the walls, not for too long, they will go back in, and the skin changes finally have taken an awful lot of damage, but that has been a pretty savage fight indeed for both sides, but I think the Gondorians will be feeling more worse for wear after that. Still no movement at the south wall of the settlement, but Dorwinion on the other hand over here have now broken through, and that is surely their cue to try and rush forward. And you can see their haste, because the Trebuchet was clearly coming over here to try and shoot directly into the Dorwinion blob. The problem is, though, in their haste, I mean, the Palace Guard are now on the front lines. The fortunes of the battle have turned a little bit. The Mirkwood Rangers are in the way of all the stragglers that make it through. There's the small matter of the Elder Pathfinders charging in also. Isengard trying to force their way through to link up with Dorwinion, but in so doing, some good progress, but now at the final hour it does look as though things are turning around in the defenders' favour once more in this portion of the settlement. Rangers that melee defense will be useful, certainly for stalling purposes. The Pathfinders, they have the room to get up to charge speed. I mean, yeah, the Trebuchet's presence over here is no longer truly required. Finally, we do have some movement here at the back end of the settlement, but not quite in the same numbers as it was going to be, I think, with Dorwinion siphoning off more of their units to other areas. Unfortunately for the Shire as well, the Shire Guard pointing the wrong way, so they will have to reposition themselves. And Arthedain's plan here, simply to slide right on by the Shire Guard. They'll take a fair amount of damage in doing this, but oof, damage done to the Gatekeepers there. There are skin changes in close proximity, but yeah, it was over here where it was always going to be a pretty dangerous part of the settlement, with artillery from the attackers now in a position to bombard the hill. The other unit of Tharbad Warhammers now in here, but I think they probably wouldn't have wanted to be committed while there's still the danger of those slingers doing consistent damage over time to them. But their presence needed on the front line. I mean, they are going to do horrendous damage to the regular Arthedain units. Troll Slayers coming back for round 2, but with only 13 of them, that surely is not going to be enough. But yeah, there are holes in this defence now, so if they want to pour forwards, they can. The only slight problem with that might be the skin changes would be there to meet whoever does. And there would be crossbow support also. Dunedain captains roaming around is a worry. Hobbits still holding the Gondorians at bay over here, and the Banderbrass archers are still shooting at them. A very depleted unit of Citadel Guard moves forwards to face a unit of Banderbrass archers. So the Arthedainians have managed to get through over here. The Shire Guard pursuing them, weirdly enough, with the Arthedain marksman backing up the other unit of infantry, which is moving around this way. This time, though, they're not able to simply slip the net of the defence. The Hobbitry in arms were in formation, waiting. But this is still not going to be a great fight for the Hobbits. Mirkwood Rangers still firing away, crossbows, the Proudfoot Protectors. This has turned into a real killing field over here now. Final 10,000 frames just reached. So Dorwinion do push forwards, but they're taking more and more damage all the time. Interesting to see the Palace Guard push forward so aggressively. They're going to meet the Moriquendi pikes here. They're going to be shot up by the Stalkers. I'm not sure whether this was a particularly wise move, because they're going to end up sandwiched now between Moriquendi pikes and the remnants of that force that they fought their way through. It's still going to be damaging for the attackers, but they might be able to neutralise probably the singular most dangerous unit on the field. Mirkwood Rangers, I mean, still, these Mirkwood firing lines doing the business. This is a concern, however. Champions of the White Hand with a reasonably clean shot up the hill, but immediately the Royal Council firing away, and you can see there the power of some of the stronger archer units that the game has to offer. Defending artillery doing the business against the attackers there. Interestingly enough, going after the Tookish hunters rather than the artillery crew themselves, that could prove to be a little bit of a blunder. To say nothing of the fact that the Trebuchet of Numenor crew are going to be pretty good in melee with those hammers against the champions, but yeah, the artillery was providing some nasty Overwatch support over here for the defenders, but the defenders over here are looking, again, more and more all over the place the more time that passes. Dunedain captains trying their best to do some cycle charging, skin changes will get in there, some out of ammo archers to give the appearance of a more together front line, and still consistently we've seen the slingers do a good job. Maybe a rout would be useful. Victory seems likely for the spearmen. Thought they were going to get charged in the back then, but the Shire Guard, again, sleeping on the job, and they are being made to pay for that. Gondorians, I mean, they do have the opportunity maybe to commit more units to this fight over here. The Banderbrass archers facing off against the Fountain Guard and doing a decent job by the looks of it. They'll surely go on to lose this fight, but they are the only things stopping the Gondorian remnant from getting up onto the hill and challenging the artillery position. Fountain Guard heading up here to intercept the units that remain, although I think they just ran out of ammunition. But the Rangers will still need to cover the remaining Elder Royal Council, who do still have a bit of ammo, but probably not too much based on the amount of time they've been active for. Crossbows still getting peppered by, this time, Tookish hunters. It's going to be a close run thing, this, but as much as the defenders have done a few things very well, yeah, I was going to say, the announcer concurs, they are going to need stuff like their artillery to do the business. Killing off a skin changer is probably not ideal, but they have managed to rout off a decent amount of units there, good amount of kills to boot. Yeah, and surely they see the necessity in climbing up this hill and seizing the middle of the settlement. Other unit, well, the skin changers are just a little bit scattered at this stage. Going up against the berserkers, though, that's kind of an unfortunate fight for them. They would have preferred softer targets to fill their boots with kills a little bit more quickly. Well, I guess they don't wear boots, but you know what I mean. Other unit of Troll Slayers stopping the Sharpshooters and the Thieves of Tharbad from rejoining. This is, again, something else we mentioned. The more territory the attackers seize in here, the fewer ways off the walls that they've used so well. The defenders will have Shire Guard on the way across, so more hobbits, the Proudfoot Protectors. I mean, they can be a truly savage unit. Gatekeepers sort of involved in a bit of a mosh pit of a fight, which is not ideal for a unit with their weapon type. More damage done by the artillery. Berserker's still losing to the skin changes, but it's the damage that accumulates over time that I'd be worried about. The Shire Guard actually pulling this back over here. I guess the skin changes presence in this part of the field was a big reason for that, but it does allow the Pathfinders a path through as well. That unit of men-at-arms continued to push forward, but will be met by the Rangers and ultimately destroyed by them as well, provided there's no other actors present. Morikwendi Stalkers, so they were victorious over here, Dorwinion and Isengard, but with a very limited amount of units. But still, a win is a win. Elder Royal Council, are they going to go and face the Fountain Guard? Do they have the ability to hit them? Morikwendi Stalker's going to do what the Champions of the White Hand could not, and actually hit the right unit. The Duneline captains are on station to bail them out as well. Fine margins indeed, but the defenders of Fornos now moving forward. I mean, Turkish hunters, what are they firing at? They want to turn around and fire at point blank into the defenders of Fornos, because if you can salvage some trebuchet shots, that could be the difference between victory and defeat. Hammerguard making their way up here, but they were involved in a truly violent skirmish. What do we have here? So the Mirkwood Rangers are going to be dealt with, but the Royal Council now arriving, they're going to have the backup from a depleted unit of Banderbrass archers as well. I mean, we've seen the Royal Council in recent times absolutely butcher the way through the front of a halberd formation. The Fountain Guard are made of slightly sterner stuff than the Nurads that it was that day. But we'll see. The Royal Council have definitely pulled their weight in this fight, that's for sure. Gondor don't have anything else to give from the front. They've already committed their units far and wide. Tattered remnants indeed, although there goes Cardolan's general. Nazkai arriving on the scene is not a great sign. Nimlothian Honor Guard making their way to the top of the hill as well, so only a few units have made it to the tower itself, but unfortunately for the defenders, those few units are really the very best of what the attackers had, or at least most of that. 27 Nazkai. Rhovanion generals lost. Tribal units a little bit more likely to rout perhaps. Pathfinders coming in here. But yeah, the trebuchet will be completely destroyed now. Shire Guard moving forward. Turkish Hunters' victory seems certain against Fountain Guard. I mean, I suppose there is a counter-attack going on here. The remaining skin changers managing to survive their encounter with the Berserkers, and with all of this support, they are going to be able to wipe away all of the resistance. I mean, the Wardens of the North pretty much they are the only thing left over here now, but you need to continue to chase them down, because if you don't, they'll turn around and start using their steel bows. So it could turn into a bit of a role reversal with the attackers claiming the hill and the defenders having to try and rally and win it back. Again, the thing that would concern me slightly is still the fact that there's so many higher quality units. Again, there's another unit of Proudfoot Protectors. 2 units of them, I mean late game pikes. Also, you know, any crossbow bolts they still have at their disposal. Elder Pathfinders, depleted as they may be. They bump in. Defense of Fornos do rout. So still very much in the balance here. I mean, in terms of sheer quantity, the defenders have the edge now. The attackers are going to be reliant on stuff like the Wardens of the North, who are now in position, and the defenders do turn around to try and sweep the attacking force from the hill. I don't think the Wardens of the North are going to have it in them, to be honest with you. I mean, that is a lot of units still alive, and the fact they've still got skin changes to be able to break up fights. Military in arms. There's 1 Sabertooth Rider. 8 Nazkai remain, swinging away at the remaining Elven Riders. Changes continue to try and punt the remaining Nazkai, but yeah, polearms as well. Shire Guard and Proudfoot's remaining. The Shire with most of what remains. And those Nimlothians kited around the top by those crossbows. Surely this will be the end of the skin changes. There's enough of the Nimlothians to do that much. The Isengard general falls. Yeah, the announcer changes his mind again. Part of that will be the skin changes, their stats, and when it comes down to a really close fight like this, multiple HP units tip the scales a little bit more, and monstrous infantry, because it has more than just an extra HP, it can skew things a bit. But the Warns of the North being engaged in melee, I think those steel bows were needed as a source of range damage more than anything else. They will win this melee fight, but there goes the Dorwinion general. Not without casualties because of those Cardolan maces, and by the time all is said and done, there you see the Gondorians, and I guess because of overwhelming force, the Nimlothians do not bring down the skin changes. Don't even bring down one extra one, to be honest. So yeah, this is going to be a defender victory, another defender victory in a 3v5. So again, recently there was a little bit going on in the comments about how 4v4s tend to be superior because they're a little bit more finely balanced, but it does go to show that 5v3s are not hopeless battles to try and contest. Pretty much all that remains are the Shire's units. One Nazkai remains. Getting chopped at by the sides. There's the Hobbit's general as well. And there he goes. One of them sent flying by one of the skin changes. So I think those wardens are the only thing that remain. There was, well actually no, there was this unit over here, wasn't there, and they have been victorious. 27 Fountain Guard. Again, that's not going to be enough really to change things. 7 veterans of Osgiliath. Again, these are the sort of units which, if they had been available earlier, could have been absolutely game-changing. But as it is, that is not going to be the case, I think. Wardens. Crossbows. Charging in, so just sort of cycle charging, passing the wardens around a bit. Tookish hunters shaken. To the surprise of very little, I'm sure. There's no real point in trying to flee at this point. I mean, is it a completely lost cause? I would say it probably is, to be honest. 43 Wardens of the North, a little over a 20 Fountain Guard. Fighting back to back, maybe you could make it work. I still say though that the Wardens probably needed to be able to use their steel bows in some of those fights that were going on top of the hill for a little bit longer than they were ultimately able to. Pathfinder's going to be able to display a slightly more venomous charge than what we've been seeing from the Merc crossbows, for sure. Shire Guard on the way in. Slowly moving forward to those Fountain Guard, but by the time they get here, all of their Dunedain allies will have been vanquished. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Fair play to the Wardens, though, to be fair, because this overwhelming force like this is usually enough to make a unit crumble relatively quickly. Not so on this occasion. Arthedain ultimately do turn things around. Umar took a chance still with a bit of ammunition, just like the veterans of Osgiliath, so we've got an archer duel and an infantry duel, but the Fountain Guard caught on the end of the Proudfoot's pikes. You all know where this is going. 5% though, and again, close run thing. Just a few things going differently, but I think the key here was the internal use of skirmishers by the defenders. Using these high walls, doing really good damage to the the attackers, I should say. Found it hard to respond to by design, because that's how the map works. And in the end, that was just a little bit too much for them. See what did the business in the endgame splash screen, but there we have it, Fountain Guard. Going to be the last one standing for the attackers. We're going to see an admission of defeat. No, we may see them rout, which is a rare enough thing from the Fountain Guard, but yeah, that charge is probably going to do the business. And there they go. 4%. So there we have it. Dorwinion and their MORIQUENDI do not recover their tower. And the defenders win a 5v3 once again. So having a look at the fate of all the players, I mean, one thing that does stand out is the fact that sub 1,000 kills for Isengard, but again, we did mention how Isengard, you know, really had the least appealing initial attack, I think, of anyone on the field against that Mirkwood force, and also Mirkwood having a smaller army in general is going to limit what you can do in terms of amount of kills somewhat anyway. Arthedain with the most, again, they lived as a more complete army longer than anyone else on the field, and they were going up against a slightly more numerous force in Cardolan, with more ready access to support from the Rhovanion as well. It's just one of those things, really. But yeah, I think the defenders did very well. I think those internal skirmishers did well. The artillery wasn't too big of a factor in this fight, I don't think, for either side, which is usually a bad thing for the defenders, but not so on this occasion. It was more a case of archers and crossbows. It's always quite hard, as I say, to gauge how effective they're being as the battle goes on. But yeah, that was clearly one of the things which was of paramount importance, you would say. So yeah, what could the attackers have done differently? I mean, maybe just have been more aggressive, because by the time they did sort of beeline it up the hill, there was always a danger they were going to run out of steam, and that's ultimately what happened. I think maybe they should have attacked from the rear of the settlement a little bit sooner. Would have siphoned off more resources. If nothing else, it would have allowed the growing Arthedain and Rhovanion attack to be more effective, and if they'd have spilled through with more units, I don't think the defenders would have been able to do anything about that, and it would have taken a bit more heat off of their own force, really, in Dorwinion's case, but also Isengard on the other side would have given Gondor a bit more of a chance. So I think that's the main thing I would say, but other than that, there's not really much else. It's all going to come down to small little things in terms of where you put your units and what the damage is being done by. Speaking of which, Pathfinders did well. Again, another example of cavalry being effective in a siege battle like this. The Entwise were used very nicely. More of an early and mid-game presence against Isengard, but very well used nonetheless. The Palace Guard were effective for quite a while. Ultimately dealt with by a bit of a counter when they tried to countercharge into Dorwinion's position, which could have been a problem. It is, after all, a pretty tough unit to go ahead and lose, but as a result, it did mean that Dorwinion didn't have a big presence when the battle for the tower was really underway. Plenty of units breaking 200 kills as well in terms of infantry, in terms of their archers. So yeah, Mirkwood Rangers, 254, 313. Yeah, so pretty much a sliding scale of effectiveness there. 133, 254, and then 313. Here Peng doing nicely. Border Guard maybe not so much. Maybe again, like if you just want to bring another unit of archers without going into the red limit though, maybe that's the thinking there, but then they could have brought the entry level archer as well, so maybe not. Woodland Realm Axeman, decent returns from them also, based on how they did against Isengard and Dorwinion. So yeah, there we have it. We have seen this map once before, as I said, but good to see it again nonetheless. Big thank you to Hidden for sending this one in. Big thanks to all the players for being a part of it as well. Again, this is not quite as old as some of the replays I've shown as of late, but it is still more of an attempt for me to clear some of that backlog that I still have going on. Speaking of which, the next one will be another battle which I think was sent to me by Thanatos on the WK created runic capital of Mistrand, which does have a theme to it as well, so that'll be the one that comes out next time up, I think, and then we'll pivot again to some of the ones that were sent to me in and around Christmas and a little bit more recently from Tommy, and then again we'll just try and get through as many of them as possible. Like I said, I'm going to try and open up that Wednesday slot for a little bit more use while I still can, and try and get as much recording done as possible so I can try and catch up, because it's always a little bit better if I have things in the chamber and sort of uploaded and ready to go way in advance, and then I'm sort of on schedule and can do replays as they come in essentially, rather than playing catch up. But this is still a result of me having to take basically like 3 months off last year from recording due to moving around and all of the various things that I've mentioned in the end of year channel update. But yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Big thank you to Hidden, big thank you to all the players once again. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.